And welcome to Nerd Initiative. This is the road to Deadpool and Wolverine. We are trying to get our way through the Fox X-Men properties, leading up to the theatrical release of Deadpool and Wolverine, coming out July 26th, although it will be out July 25th, because of early releases in theaters. But my name is Tony. With me tonight will be Will and Law, as well as a number of other people that are joining a little bit later. But just to remind you before we get started, if you want to go ahead and check out our merch store, you can find that there. You can find amazing merch, t-shirts, hats, mugs, all the things, especially stuff for your favorite shows. You can also check out our website. Again, remember, today is New Comic Book Day. So if you want to know what's going on in the world of comic book reviews, please go ahead and check that out. I feel really small in this. I don't know why I didn't zoom in today, but that's fine. Also remember, tomorrow, Thursday, will be Wrestling Night Live. You'll meet the team. They'll talk about what's going on in professional wrestling today. And then, from there, let's go ahead and just let me take this down and let's get started. So again, with me is Law, Black Girl Marvel, as well as Will, or that Will Wilkins, the host of Netheads. Thank you guys for joining again.
No problem.
So happy
to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled. It is so nice to be here and be seen again.
I feel so small compared to you guys right now.
That's genetics, man. You can't fight it. Listen,
it's the whole not zooming in. Everything's gonna shake here for a minute. I could adjust the screen, but why not? I've got all of this stuff going on behind me.
I mean,
it looks beautiful behind you. Your background's
not
great.
to mention the beautiful part is anytime you do decide you want to futz with it, all you got to do is ask one of us a question, and next thing you know, we're full frame for a moment while you reframe, and
then you come back. Exactly.
Nobody will know that. But let's talk more.
Now that that's out there, I can't obviously do it.
Good point.
Yeah, but tonight we are talking about the movie X-Men: Days of Future Past. Let's go ahead and pull up the screen up here. You can see the image. Funny. It's the culmination of, I guess, the executives realizing that X-Men: The Last Stand was a bad idea, and here, come on, Megan. Hello, Megan.
Yay.
Megan.
People thought that that last X-Men: Last Stand was a bad idea. They did a whole bunch of. Hey, Megan, can you hear me? We can hear you.
You're live. No pressure,
okay.
But you are live.
All right, I can hear you guys now.
There
awesome,
we go.
Awesome.
Yay.
Hello.
So,
but you know what? I think the only good thing that ever came out of the pandemic is the level that the audience is willing to accept us onboarding somebody into the call and getting that stuff sorted right in the show. I am also
Zoom
running
life.
the movie again while we watch it. So if I suddenly go way off topic and I'm like, oh my gosh, this moment, I apologize in advance.
Now, Will, are you watching the theatrical release or are you watching the
Baby,
rogue cut?
I only go rogue cut because, that's the only way you can roll with this movie. Although I will admit at 2 hours and 28 minutes, it is no Avengers Endgame. And there are certain moments where you're like, why did I go with the one that had more minutes in it? Because, oh, my Lord. Are we there yet, Dad? Please. I feel that way a few times in this movie. But other than that, it's a stellar watch. I apologize, Tony. Please take your show back.
I honestly feel like with the last couple movies that we've reviewed leading up to this, I feel like Fox lowered the bar enough to where this film was relatively well received. It's not an Avengers Endgame, but it was almost like Fox's Infinity War in a moment. Because you had, dire situations, you had characters dying, you had all of this stuff going on. Of course, none of it mattered because it got really timey-wimey at the end.
Well, it got timey-wimey in the beginning too, which from a storytelling standpoint, they do an amazing job here because they instantly both give us a compelling moment while also showing us what the stakes are, right? In a very, very painful way. both in the way of the violence that unfolds before it's undone, and as my friend Zach, who's probably in the chat, also pointed out, also very painful because in the beginning, it's not Professor X, it's Professor Exposition, because he's got like 5 minutes that he's going into to tell us all the stakes and what's going on. It's just like Patrick Stewart must have had his script was that thick, and it was just from the first 10 minutes of this movie.
Of course, then there's Xavier talking to himself, which we had a long conversation about the problems with Charles Xavier last week. So, we could always continue on to that. I find it interesting that, Charles is trying to convince himself to not be a jerk. And he does it by showing him everything, which kind of makes him a jerk because the timeline of what Charles chooses to tell and not to tell people about the future is still very, very much there. But for those, Z also said in here that, only had the theatrical cut. So let's go ahead and first of all, let's just explain real quick. And then I want to get everybody's opinion on everything. But the road cut is pretty much the theatrical cut, but where Kitty Pryde is stabbed by Logan's claws and she bleeds out and she stays until the end of the movie, still keeping him in that time hold. They realize she's losing too much blood, which makes more sense because that was a pretty good gash on her. And so they decide to go find Rogue, who we know in the first X-Men, it's kind of full circle there, that she took, Eric's powers, Magneto's powers, and used it for bad. Now, they're going to try to use her for good. And you find her, she's being holed up in the
like converted like X Mansion
in Cerebro's like dome,
like
they're trying to find a way to use her ability to take away mutant powers. Which I want to know this real quick: why, when they had a mutant in Last Stand who could that you just dose the mutants where they can't have their powers? Like, we know they can get them back, but that same drug could easily have been used to regularly dose mutants to not have their powers.
But why would you want to regularly dose someone when you can permanently take it away?
Plus, I also kind of took I kind of took the feeling that it was a modified version of Beast's serum, and I think it was kind of, in my mind's fiction, it was a modified version of the serum that was unique to him that he got to work for Xavier. And other than that, it's not like you're just gonna. But then the movie undoes all of that logic.
But they do, because Last Stand is about the little boy being able to take away your ability. So that serum comes from like the little boy, but it's not permanent.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, it's truly not permanent. So because when you're around him, it's gone, but the moment you step away from him, it's back. So it shows the non-permanence of his mutant gene. So like, for them to kind of get Rogue to try to figure out how to just get rid of mutant powers, I don't know how you would do that with her abilities, though. I don't know how you would manipulate her abilities. I know because she absorbs them. It's not like she takes them away into herself. She doesn't she doesn't take them and then like they're just gone forever. I will
see you, and I will raise the stakes here. We know that Mystique from the first X-Men, she can have the appearance of a mutant, but that does not give her the complete molecular structure of one. She had the claws like Wolverine, but Wolverine was able to cut those claws because they were not adamantium. And we also know that she couldn't heal herself, even though she was. So how are they using Mystique's DNA to create modifying Sentinels that then have the powers of the mutants?
Because man, it's not just Mystique, it's her DNA, and the scientists be messing. You know what I'm saying? It's that simple. It is just that simple. So they found the element that worked, and they learned through that not only to modify appearance, but also to absorb power. Because
they took and killed more mutants than they really showed us. So, and it seems like every mutant that they came across, they would absorb their abilities. So obviously they got something from Rogue. They learned how to take some type of like, because whenever they would because like how Iceman died, like they took his ability. That way he couldn't use it against them, and then they used fire against
And then
him,
they
which was
turned
pyro.
them.
So obviously
They flew with
pyro was dead.
and then they burned. Like that
Yeah.
was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible opening. I mean, by the way, before we lose these thoughts, the one thing I want to say, like overall things for the film before we dive into more detail, is that one, I really think this movie in some ways is kind of a blueprint or a foreshadowing of what we will get in Deadpool and Wolverine, which is why I was excited about this movie, because there's the potential of rewriting reality. Okay, that potential is there just from a multiversal perspective instead. But the other thing too is you just got to give it up to the really easy and blatant way they say that Patrick Stewart is not McAvoy when he tells Logan literally, and I'm trying my best to be verbatim, I was a much different man back then, trust me. Because he's not Patrick Stewart, he's McAvoy. So I just thought that was like one of the most blatant, like just thumb on it moments of dialogue. It's a little bit much, pal.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Just in the comment also here, Andrew Gross said, it wasn't a failure before the MCU started. It was good movies. Yeah, they were good movies. Not all of them were there, but they're, I think one of the things is I enjoyed Days of Future Past a whole lot more because of what it undid. And I think that was what they really played into. It's kind of like, we know
it's our version of Flashpoint.
Yeah, I still contend that they didn't really undo anything. We're just looking at a different universe because there were inconsistencies between the prior movies and these with what happens to characters and things. So, like, realistically speaking, I just think it's kind of an alternate reality that does have characters we're familiar with and powers that we expect them to have. And
I think it started that way. I think it started as an alternate universe, but because if you think about it, if we go by the logic of the MCU, right? Like, I know this is Fox, so like let's expand our minds a little bit. Like, I know this is Fox, but if we go like MCU time travel, this would be another universe, because we know that whatever you change, it doesn't change your present. It just branches off into an alternate universe where this didn't happen and now this is continuing to happen. But I don't think Fox was thinking that deep, because the MCU was doing a lot during that time. So because like you see at the end, like Jean is back, Cyclops is back, so they didn't die. So essentially this reverted us back to like the last stand that didn't happen, like type of thing. It erased.
I wish they would just admit it's two different timelines and they treated every X-Men movie as if it was their last.
That'd be great,
because I love all of them.
Me too.
I like them all. I find something enjoyable in every single one,
except for Dark Phoenix.
But every single one, they're like, this is our last. Balls to the wall, kill off Cyclops, bring him back. Kitty's there for some reason. Cable should have been here, but maybe it just seemed like there was a lot of boxes they wanted to check, and they
for sure.
And the guy who played Stryker in Days of Future Past, he was originally casted to be a young Juggernaut.
Yeah,
and they took him out of the film, and they said, "Hey, listen, good news and bad news. Bad news is you're not Juggernaut anymore. We're not having Juggernaut in the film. But good news is we're gonna have William Stryker, and we'd love for you to play for that part." So,
but you know what's crazy? He kind of looks like William Stryker in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like when we first see him pop up, like the younger version, he kind of looks like the older version of that young character that they got. So that's honestly pretty decent casting, which, I mean, it happened like unironically, but still, like that's still like a piece of interesting casting though.
Yeah.
Because he looks very similar.
Yeah. So I liked so the opening of this film, we have the Days of Future Past stuff, but what we do see is when it comes to the past, we have, a group of mutants that are working in the military, and they're about to go get, dissected basically. And who comes in, but none other than Mystique. And you find out Mystique is definitely being that freedom fighter. Now, we talked a little bit about how Mystique was being overused. And of course, the Jennifer Lawrence, portrayal
of it all.
it was very lackluster. I did understand where they were going with her role. I feel like they were trying to do too much to try to make her more important, which is I think why when we got to Dark Phoenix, I really enjoyed what happened to her there, because I felt like it needed to just stop. And
it needed to end,
yeah, and
for
I think
sure.
even Jennifer Lawrence was at that
Yeah,
point. I mean, she
for
just
sure.
wanted to stop as well. It was kind of one of those things where,
Mhm.
you know, Hugh Jackman kept saying he was going to leave the role, and then they had him, you know, here, they had him there, and then of course, you know,
Yeah,
when
everywhere.
what was it? Was it Age of Apocalypse or was it Dark Phoenix? That no, it was Age of Apocalypse, where he kind of like has his cameo as, you know, Berserk mode Wolverine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, fresh off the conveyor belt Weapon X, not knowing, being able to go back into that timeline, not
Ooh,
knowing
Will,
anything about who he was at that but prior to that moment.
Will, you're coming in
Oh, I'm
hot.
sorry.
Your volume went up immensely.
Wow.
he's excited. He's talking loud.
Yes.
Maybe
I
it
don't
was
know
the
though. I was like,
passion.
whoa.
By the way,
I don't
Megan, I have to
know.
I
say
was
I
like,
love your shirt.
He's just really into it.
Yeah, solid shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh, hello. Hi. Thank you.
Oh, hi.
I got it from never mind.
Uh-oh.
I forgot the
shop
name of
there.
the store.
Love it.
It's not a store. It's a Salvation Army.
Come on,
No
Salvation
way!
Army.
Yeah.
Somebody dropped a gem.
If you just go in the
I found a MODOK toy at a
just
Goodwill.
go in the
That's
men's
best
section
I've
and
found a
just
deal
grab
for.
all the Marvel ones.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Sheesh. So yeah. So weren't they originally when John was it when John Vaughn? No, John. Who's the director for First Class? I forget now. I said it last week and then I forgot.
Matthew
Matthew
Vaughn.
Vaughn. Sheesh, I don't know where John came from.
John Vaughn?
Yeah, it didn't sound right, but I couldn't
Yeah.
uncommit. So I remember when they were first, like when they were in production of the film, they were talking about it being a soft reboot. And so I immediately thought, okay, this is, you know, this is the direction they're going. They don't want to do anything more with them. And then of course the Wolverine comes out with this appearance of Charles Xavier. And you're like, oh, well, wow, we're really going there. We're going to do this. And of course we know that because of these two timelines, we get, you know, some fun references in Deadpool and Deadpool 2 regarding these X-Men.
Yeah.
But from your perceptions, which cast do you prefer? Do you prefer the First Class or do you prefer the OG class? I guess you could say it that way. Singer versus Vaughn.
I'd say bits and pieces of both.
Yeah, like a mixture.
Because I actually did like Sophie Turner as Jean, but I didn't like the other actress as Jean. So it's apples and oranges. I liked them both. I think they both worked really, really well together on their own. Like,
yeah,
somehow Professor X and Magneto, both versions just were, their chemistry is off the charts. I think they were all worked really, really well together, but I'd like to see them intermingle.
Huge shout out.
I'm pretty much on the same place.
Huge shout out to Bishop being in this movie, though.
To who?
Bishop.
Oh, Bishop. Yeah.
Bishop.
For like, it's not like you said, shout out to a bitch for being on this movie. I was like, who?
That's what I thought.
I was
Bishop.
like,
damn, Tony, you changed.
I was like, I was like, what happened?
I was here for the
wow.
drama.
Right? Wow,
yes,
making me feel weird.
It's like, all right then. I was like, okay, we getting into it.
Jeez. No, I really liked the idea of them bringing Bishop on. I wish we would have had him a lot sooner in the movies. I think he would have been a great member of the primary cast. But it would have also, I think the big thing, like the thing I put up my hope on the MCU is that if we do get the X-Men, and if we, mind you, they could do a whole lot more with a whole lot different mutants. They don't have to do the OG X-Men team, but if they do, just seeing more accurate like comic booky costumes, I think it's more possible. I mean, we're seeing what we're doing with Deadpool and Wolverine, with Wolverine, his costume. I'd love to see Bishop in the blue and yellow.
I feel like they can do it in a way where it doesn't look cheesy. Because I feel like what you have on the comic book side is somehow in print and plays different than when you put it in live action, but I still feel like you can take those colors and you can make it work for like his character. Like I feel like they get afraid of that. They're like, we gotta moderate it up for the new people, and I'm like, you truly don't, because if you go to like WandaVision, people lost their mind seeing Wanda and Vision in like their comic book accurate like outfits. Like it was a fun thing to put them in a context, you know. Even with the upgraded ones was cool too, but it was like really cool to see them in that and like play around with that. So I feel like if these superhero movies did a little bit more of like referencing and pulling some stuff from the comics. I'm not saying plot wise you have to pull everything from the comics, because go read the comic if you want that plot, you know what I mean? Yeah. But to I feel like you bridge the gap and you bring in the best of both worlds if you can mix those, like some new ideas with some comic book ideas and like making it work.
Well, it's like how they did the live action Kang. It looked really, really good coming from the comics, and it didn't look cheesy. It didn't look just like you said, cheesy. So I think that's the way they should go. They do a great job, but then there are some characters that they have to change or it will look cheesy. Like Sunspot,
no, for sure.
He's in this movie, and if they want him to be in the MCU with his powers, it's either comic accurate or we don't see his powers, because I want to see them exactly.
No, for sure. No, for sure. Yeah.
And they also did. I mean, the MCU has also gone other directions with certain characters. I mean, if you think about like the High Evolutionary in Guardians Volume 3, looks vastly different than the comic book High Evolutionary, and it made sense. And I don't recall anybody ever complaining about that. And let's face it, it was Chuck Udiuji, I think, was the one that was High Evolutionary. Amazing actor. Fell in love with his acting in what was it? Peacemaker. With him in that role, I thought, you know, he played that well, and he was very menacing and very triggering, I think, in Volume 3. So they don't have to go full comic book, but I feel like
no, they have the full, but you can reference it, you can bring in some pieces, you know. Plus I feel like his performance elevated it to a point where I don't care what he had on. If he would have kept that performance, it would have still been amazing. Like he could have had on a sack and people would have been like, that was amazing.
I just heard a noise. I gotta go check something.
I'll
be back. I hope
Safe travels.
Fingers crossed.
Just wait when you're done.
Godspeed.
Oh my gosh.
So one of my favorite things, I think, in this film, we get Quicksilver, and you know, we had, and this was right around the time where you have Avengers Age of Ultron. You've got this going on. This was like 2014, 2015. So we know that Disney, Marvel, and Fox made an agreement where the Maximoff twins could be in Age of Ultron, but the idea was they wanted Quicksilver to stay with Fox. So I think that led more to them killing him off in Age of Ultron, but allowing Wanda Maximoff, which is also why in Days of Future Past, when you do meet, of course, our Quicksilver, his sister is not Wanda, and there's allusion to Magneto being his father, but that doesn't really get fleshed out more until future First Class films. I want to really kind of explain like how the McAvoy timeline. But I do have to admit, his betrayal of Quicksilver in the Fox universe was phenomenally more entertaining than what we got in the MCU, and I understand why they wanted to push for that character more. The jailbreak scene for Magneto in Days of Future Past is probably one of the many fun things. They only being topped by, I think it was like months long filming for the mansion exploding in what was it, Age of Apocalypse?
Age of Apocalypse. Yeah.
So absolutely loved him as Quicksilver. I thought it was a great casting, and at the same time, like it led to a big disappointment in WandaVision, but that's not Fox's problem.
Yeah, I was okay with that. I was kind of on the fence about that when I first came out, about him coming in and he wasn't actually like her brother, but like was just, you know, this guy. I was okay with that because I actually enjoyed Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver. They just didn't give us enough, right? So it's hard to like really fight for his character when all we have is like a version of him that isn't Quicksilver but is Quicksilver, because they didn't really get like, they muddled with his like his background because of Fox, because they had to like make sure that those stay separate. So I'm kind of happy in WandaVision he didn't turn out to be like, because I didn't want them to like, if he was gonna bring somebody back, I wanted you to bring back Aaron Taylor Johnson so I could see what else he had to do. But he's gonna be Craven, so we don't have to worry about him.
Well, I don't.
He's
I
gonna
don't
be
think
Craven.
it
We
was
have to worry about him.
Yeah.
Well, I
Don't
don't
worry
even
about him.
think
He's
it was them being excited that her brother was coming back, but it was like, what's going on between Fox and the MCU? What does this mean? And then it turns out it was nothing.
Mhm.
But also, I think Aaron Taylor Johnson played a better Wanda's brother, but I think Fox's Quicksilver was the better Quicksilver, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense. I just can't go that way because I've seen more of the Fox Quicksilver than
Yeah.
we've seen of this one. And this one seemed, and like Aaron seemed like it was like a mistake. He wasn't born with these abilities. They were given to him. So like it was like, it's kind of like, oh, okay, but this Quicksilver just seems to like live in his powers. He's fun.
He's
not like
life.
riddled with, doesn't he? Like he's
stealing everything.
like, and I think people stealing everything, multiples of like everything, and it's just because he's bored and it's like, I have no focus, I have nothing else to do, and then he finds a focus, and then he becomes like everybody's like favorite character because we see that trajectory in his character. He goes from being like this kind of in the basement, stealing whatever kid to being one of the most powerful, also saving like everybody multiple times. It's just and saving saving heavy hitters, like you saving Magneto and Xavier and Wolverine, like, and you're a kid. So like it's just
plus I feel like Fox made it a point to show that he's not Wanda's brother in the Fox universe, because the poor mother, she's been through so much. She says, your little sister Emily or something is upstairs, and I was like, okay, well, that felt rude, but okay. Thanks, Fox.
No, facts, because you could have just been like, your little sister's upstairs. We know it's Wanda. But also, they made it a point to make it so that they didn't seem like twins.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really not Wanda. You know what I'm saying? She's little bitty girl, right?
Yeah.
So it's really not Wanda. You know what I'm saying? Like it's dangerously not her. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Dangerously not her.
Yeah. Well, not anything Marvel related, but I will say this: when we get to the MCU, the Maximoff twins, I was glad that they got rid of Aaron Taylor, specifically because after seeing Godzilla and seeing them as a married couple, from being siblings to then a married couple, it was too much too quickly. Like,
I didn't care. But I get it though. Not knocking you, because it's like what was that? What was that movie with what is that movie? It's All of the Stars or whatever. That movie with like Shailene Woodley and Elson Elgort or whatever. They play like cancer patients.
Fault in Our Stars.
Fault in Our Stars. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. A Fault in Our Stars. It was like they were together, and you go to Divergent, and they're brother and sister. So it was just kind of like, it's like y'all was just kissing like a movie ago. Like y'all was just, so like I get what you're saying. I'm just saying personally for me, I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't care. See them brothers and sisters. I'm fine.
Like, don't release two different like relations in one year. But
no, I get it. I get it.
But I would love to know at what speed his Walkman was going for him to be able to listen to music as he's running around.
I feel like it's like the Speed Force. I feel like if it's attached to his person, it's okay. It's like protected with like within like his ability, because like if that's the case, then his clothes should burn up, and they don't. So it's protected.
I like that. Mom had a bad taste.
So my mom had a bad taste. Yeah. Yeah, that, because it's very true, because he's that guy.
I'd say she'd have good taste because Magneto was a snack. Good for her.
I mean, she has good aesthetic taste for sure, but he's a terrible guy. Like,
she's no prize either. Like, get control of your little mutant kid. He's out stealing everything. Come on.
How can she? He's fast. She
I
can't
don't
catch
know.
him.
I just want to prove my point that Magneto is super hot.
No. You don't have to prove that. It's known. You're correct on that.
Yeah.
That's a good looking
Yeah.
man.
I mean, let's face it. Like
He
even
would've made
Ian McKellen was
hell of a Doom.
he's amazing guy, amazing actor. You know, you hear he just he's in the hospital right now because he fell during one
Yeah.
of his theatrical shows. Like he was in a fight scene and he fell off the
That
stage. So
sucks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is time for him to stop fighting.
Well,
You're an old man now. You're an older man.
Again, this is not Marvel related. They asked him before this fall if he would be willing to reprise his role as Gandalf at any time in the future, and he says, "As long as I'm not dead."
I respect it.
Yeah.
But also he's also the same man that like for a while couldn't stand those movies. So like it's really irking me that these like older actors who this is not saying this is why you're famous, but this is why you're like internationally known is for these movies, and you're like you kind of like piss on them, and then you're like, but I mean, if they want me back, you know, he kind of was the Lord of the Rings films. He was tired of those films. He was like he was talking about how it's not real acting because it's on a green screen and you're talking to a ball and you're not talking to a person. Like he had a lot of things to say about these films.
Okay, I think that was after The Hobbit though, because I think Lord of the Rings was more practical. I could definitely see it after The Hobbit, because let's face it, that I wasn't a big fan of those movies after they were made, but they had.
I love them
all.
I love them all. I just enjoy film. I just enjoy like fun stuff. We going on a road trip? Let's do it. You know, like let's watch it. It doesn't matter.
I like fun
so
stuff
the whole movie,
too, which is why I don't like the Lord of the Rings movies. So
yeah, you don't like the Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, I got
movies?
really no, I don't.
Megan, we have to do like a whole thing about like
it was
hot
bound
takes from you.
I am the queen of hot takes. I get it, but I personally think it's because I'm such an individual. So,
I'm not saying it's a bad opinion. I'm just saying it's very different, and it's jarring in my mindset. So I want to hear more. So
it was going to come out at some point
next week for Logan.
I've been looking forward.
I mean, I feel like everything's.
I'm so looking forward to that.
I feel like everything's not everybody's cup of tea, though.
No, it's not.
Like I feel like, you know, you might like fantasy, but that might be too much for you. Like that might not be like the fantasy that you want to partake in. So I definitely get that.
Well, yeah, but there's people who thought Days of Future Past was trash. I mean, I really loved it, but like,
no, for sure.
I get why.
No, for sure. You have people on both sides.
Yeah, it does feel messy at some points. Totally. And then you have the rogue cut, and you're like, "Wow, what's going on?" It makes sense, but I liked it.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Nothing but walking. Even the trees walked.
I love Clerks too, and their whole argument about Lord of the Rings is the funniest thing. About like one of the funniest things of that film is him like going at it with the nerd about the Lord of the Rings. That's just good stuff right there. But yeah.
So the whole movie was based on the idea that if they stop Mystique from killing Trask or trying to kill Trask, that everything would work out and everything would be okay. Again, a great way to kind of point out who your star is in the film.
Right.
I don't think I was expecting a frazzled Charles Xavier, but it made sense that if he was on board and he was like on point at the beginning of that film would have happened a lot shorter, because it was the only way that they could go through the film where he couldn't control Mystique, because he wasn't in a place to be able to do that. Wolverine was interesting, in my opinion. Anything to get him back in his bone claws. I feel like that's like everything at this point. Like X-Men Origins. Let's talk about the bone claws. The Wolverine, he loses his animated claws and regrows his bone claws. And then you've got this where he's back in time before the adamantium, so he's got his bone claws. And
I think it's cheap. I think it's cheaper.
The only thing that I could say that I really appreciate about this film when it came to Wolverine was, if you go back and watch the original X-Men and he's on the train with Rogue and Magneto like stops him And he says,
Yeah.
interesting, it makes a whole lot more sense now after that. Because the first time Magneto would have really encountered Logan, he had bone claws, and now
Right,
he's got
he
it coursing
didn't.
through his. So it played into when you go into X2, where Magneto and Xavier are talking. They're both talking about this knowledge that they have about Wolverine, where you're like, well, where'd that come from? And it's like, oh no, because
Right.
they experienced him, and we now have that fulfillment there.
Said that. Right.
Yeah.
Some continuity stuff did get like pieced together, throughout all of these films, like all of these Fox films, including the Wolverine like sequels, I guess you could say, because he branched off and just made like his own like trilogy in a sense. They were like X1 through 3. They were like, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like they just kind of like gave him his own trilogy in a way. But all of these films, they have a tendency of like, or whoever like the writer directors or whoever is like in charge of piecing this all together, some people do remember some of the past films, and that's always nice to see. Like if you go from like the Wolverine where she's like, I saw you die with your heart in your hand, even though we know like that's not what she meant, but whoever created Logan was like, I think I could make this work. Like I think I could,
and we're gonna
it makes sense.
We're gonna feed that opinion, and we're gonna make
you feel me? And we gotta He's really gonna let it go. But to me, I'm gonna stick with that for the rest of my life. I'm gonna be like, that works, because like it's just beautiful, right? It's like because what I've known about like watching these like fantasy films and these films about abilities and about premonitions in particular, those who have like visions never quite see everything and how it actually looks. They either get like images and it's a possibility that she did see him and she saw him surrounded by blood and she saw a heart in his hand, not realizing that it could be a child. It is because her power could probably work on a different like system. So I'm just like, I'm here for it. But I like when they're able to piece these little things into like the movies. It just makes it more fulfilling for people that's been watching it from the start to like where it is now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like you're saying with prophecy, like I always thought of it as like sometimes the prophecy actually is what triggers the actual event to happen in the first place. Like even knowing it, like I remember watching like the old the Twilight Zones where it's like I forget what it was, but it was like that prediction thing, the little fortune teller, and it's like you're gonna die in this thing, and what are they doing? They're living until that moment, trying to see what happens. I feel like it kind of like in movies at least, fortunes kind of start the effects to roll to lead to that.
Yeah, because you by you trying to stop a prophecy, you actually started. Because if you didn't know about it, you probably wouldn't have started the prophecy. But because somebody told you about the prophecy, you started. Like that's usually how it goes. Like you lead to your prophecy. Except
for in the case of Madam Web, because that made no sense whatsoever.
Oh, it did. If he would have never looked for these girls, they probably would have never. He probably would have did something way down the line that made them come after him. But because you set them up to find her, you started your own prophecy. You just killed yourself early. Like to me, it made sense. Like the movie didn't make sense. Let me make this perfectly clear. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
This is recorded now. I'm going to clip that and throw that on the internet.
No. You can't. Let me reel this back. The film itself as a whole, I can see what they were trying to do, but they failed miserably because you kept trying to throw in Spider-Man stuff when nobody asked for that, because this is not a Spider-Man film. But taking that aside, him having visions of his death, which was his curse, him having visions of his death led to his early death. Because if you would have just left these girls alone, they would have never met each other. They would have never met her. These things would have never happened.
These are the Raiders of the Lost Ark scenario. Yeah. You take Indiana Jones out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, everything still happens the way it is.
Same movie. He does not change the plot at all.
It kind of slows it down.
I swear the creators of Madam Web are watching and they're saying, she's right. That's probably why we did that.
Well, So
If they just hire me,
there was this thing that Sony
we
said
can make
a
it
long
work.
time ago that it said if you just put Spider-Man in something, it is guaranteed to make $1 billion. Like they really had that mentality because they saw the Raimi films, they saw, the Amazing Spider-Man, even though the Amazing Spider-Man was Amazing Spider-Man 2 was more critically, criticized than any of the previous ones, which I still say it was a good movie in its own right. It just had way too much going on and they were doing too much lead into, because you remember they like before the film even came out, they're like, we're going to do a Sinister Six film. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And they overdid it for themselves. And then Sony just got lazy and they're like, oh, well, Marvel's making the Spider-Man films and they're doing a great job. We're going to ride on that. And we're going to say that they're in the same universe. And Kevin Feige's going, no, it's not. And they're like, we're going to make Venom and we're going to make Morbius and we're going to do Madam Web. We can't do any wrong. And everyone's like, yeah, you can. You can stop now.
You can. Because you don't, because you're to me, you're not writing good stories. You're like banking on people coming for the name, right? You're banking on people being like, Spider-Man might be in this, or like Venom is easy because everybody likes Venom. I don't think there's a lot of people who don't like Venom. Like Venom is a popular character, so if you just throw Venom on anything, people are
hold on. Megan, do you like Venom?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I do.
Okay.
So like
I was waiting for a hot take for a second. I thought maybe.
So 2 things. Spider-Man was in Madam Web, just in someone's belly. He was there. I haven't seen Madam Web, so I don't know. And then 2,
that's director, it. I think he was. Ain't that the Andrew Garfield one? Yeah.
Well, the director of Madam Web came out a few weeks before the movie released and was like, it is not in the same universe as the Venom verse. So everyone's like, then what the fuck is it? So like,
right. Well, that's stupid. What's the point of you having Morbius, Madam Web, and Venom if they're not all in the same shared dark universe? That would make more sense than you having 3 alternate universes all connected to this one Peter Parker that we don't know which Peter Parker it is. Like, to me, Madam Web went the way of the Amazing Spider-Man 2, where there was too much in it, where they needed to like strip it a little bit and just streamline it, because you didn't need all 3 girls in this film. You needed one. You could have one, and she could have got her abilities. They all could have got their abilities, and she could start seeing the other girls that's connected, and that could have been like a sequel. But y'all putting 3 girls in here with all these 3 different personalities that was annoying me to death the entire movie.
Well, okay, that goes into the whole Spider-Man lore, and we're going way off topic, but you go into
really are.
There is one spider totem per universe. Like that's always been the thing. Like with the argument of the Ultimate Universe, you had, basically, Peter kind of passed his totem off to Miles in that sense. But in the multiverse, there was always just one spider totem. That's why when Ezekiel appears in the comics, he's kind of like he's at one point in the comics, he's the source of all of Peter Parker's woes, because Ezekiel's existence actually causes issues for him, because basically the universe is trying to correct the fact that there are 2 spider totems when Ezekiel shouldn't have been one. And that's when you kind of get the whole idea that he had Cindy Moon trapped in like this cell type thing, and like there's this whole thing. I think it was the Original Sins or whatever it was, where Ezekiel kind of makes himself known. He's like, basically, all the traumatic events that you've gone through, where you've had all the Sinister Sticks and everything else. That's basically the universe trying to get rid of me, but I passed all that off on you. So that's a you problem now. It's not a me problem. And so having 3 spider people, spiderlings, spider whatever, always kind of rubbed me wrong when I went into watching this film. And then of course you never see them in costume except for in a vision. So it was again that same misdirect in Morbius, which I want to say this to Z. If you didn't watch Morbius, this wouldn't make sense, but technically Adrian Toomes is in Morbius's universe at the end of the film.
Yeah.
So
somehow he went there.
It really, Sony, just stop. Public service,
or Sony
let Marvel
hire me. hire me and I can help you out better than what you're doing now. I know I can. I 100% know I can. I truly do. I truly do, because these films are like, nobody knows how to write women,
Nope.
and it's very frustrating. They write women
Yep.
as though they write women the way that they don't like them, the way that like maybe some girl in their past has treated them, and then they're like, that's all women. That's how all women work. Because you know, it would have been cool if these young girls would have realized that they were being like chased to be killed when they were in the subway, and they would have stopped all the foolishness. Like if my life is on the line, I'm not about to dance to Britney Spears on top of a diner for people to see. I'm gonna stay in the woods like this person who like saved my life. She weirdly saved my life out of nowhere, told me to.
Yeah.
I might go get some food and then go back, or eat real quick and then go back. But like it just, there was no sense of urgency in this film. There was no sense of like danger. Like I knew nobody was going to die but him. Like there was no stakes. You know, it would have been cool if like possibly Ben's sister lost the baby and that actually wasn't Peter.
Of course, they
That
never
would have been
specifically
cool.
say that it's Peter.
No, they don't. But it'd have been cool if she did lose that child. Like, give me some type of stakes. Give me something where the main character is like, oh no, I got to get my abilities together because people around me are dying because of this person. And that never happened. There was no stakes in this film. It was just a lot of catty women, a lot of women that didn't want to be around each other. And I'm like, this is why they feel like women-led films won't be made, because they keep making stuff like this and proving themselves right when you're writing them wrong. And it's very frustrating.
Yeah. And then I think at the same time, you have films like The Marvels, which I think was a really well done film. And
amazing.
It was drowned with the strikes. It was given very poor PR and anything else.
Yep.
And so like there was no marketing for that film. And I remember I went and saw it. My son was mad that we didn't see it with him. So we ended up going to the theaters again to watch it with him. And he absolutely loved the film. And you know, and it's
The Marvels was great, but it was just bogged down by about a lot of like women hating incels, and wasn't given like the credence that it was needed. Like that's the problem with like women-led films. They don't get the push they need as all these other films do. They don't get the writing that it deserves. Even though I think The Marvels was amazing. Like, don't get it wrong. Like, The Marvels was great. Blending these three people together, technically like three different generations in a way together, was amazing. And how their powers blend together and how they learned how to fight. To me, all that was amazing. It felt very fresh for the MCU, something that hasn't like a studio that hasn't been fresh in a long time. If I'm being honest, as much as I like the things that they've put out, they've been a little stale. I'll be honest about it. But this was fresh. But again, you're letting down not only your female fans, but the females that like created this film by not marketing correctly, not pushing it out like you needed to be, and like not like interviewing these women. Like there were no interviews, not even like Zoom interviews. Like I like if your pulse isn't to like movies and Marvel, you wouldn't have known that this movie existed. You wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to segue us back into X-Men.
Don't even segue, just throw us in there.
No, I can do it. So here's the funny thing. The MCU, there was a time where Sony was trying to work with Marvel, especially when it came to the Amazing Spider-Man films, where they were going to possibly have either Oscorp in the Avengers movie, or they're going to have Avengers Tower in New York in Amazing Spider-Man 2. It didn't work out. But what did happen was Sony was contractually obligated to attach the trailer for Days of Future Past at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2. So full circle back to Days of Future Past.
So proud of you.
So proud. I talked a lot. So I want to get you guys overall opinions. What did you like? What did you dislike? What do you think worked for the film? What do you think didn't work for the film? I'm going to shut up now.
I think it should have been more of a kiddie pride movie. And I think Cable should have been in it, and I really enjoyed Nightcrawler.
I think Nightcrawler on all fronts is pretty dope. He's pretty awesome. He's like a fun comical character they always make.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, thought this was a nice plot to a film. You
Mhm.
know, trying to change disaster is always a good like plot of, if you think about it, like it's always a good plot. It's something to reach for.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think this should have been a Jennifer Lawrence led film.
No.
I still feel like at this time, and I know she was in like the Hunger Games and she led those films, and that's a solid. Don't think she should have led these films. I don't think she was quite ready to lead an X-Men type of film. And I mean from her start to like now, like I don't think she was like the person to, she should have been like a really good supporting character.
Yeah.
But I also understand she was the hottest thing, you know, walking during that time. So they were like, Jennifer Lawrence is Mystique, and everybody know people love Mystique, so they just thought that it was symbiotic, and I was just kind of like, eh. But I enjoyed like the Magneto, the Magneto Xavier Logan aspect of it. I enjoyed that. I enjoy human moments of this. I enjoyed seeing, you know, Xavier down and him having to talk to himself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to talk to yourself. It's like literally looking in the mirror and being like, you're better than this. And like he had this moment with a version of himself that he couldn't even think that he could be. You know, that he didn't even think was possible. To me, I always kind of cry at that scene, because to me, it's just beautifully acted, it's beautifully shot, the music is great. That's like always one of my favorites. I never understood Kitty. Just because she can phase through walls, that means she can phase into the future. I never quite understood how her power developed to that. But it's a movie where people have, you know, adamantium, you know, latent in their skin. So I suspend my disbelief. So that was always weird to me. I did like Rogue coming in. I wish we could have seen more from like Storm. I feel like she's always crippled in these films, but also understand Halle Berry was pregnant. She had like a surprise pregnancy during the filming of this. So a lot of her stuff got cut because of that. But yeah, overall, I think it was a good movie. To me, anything Peter Dinklage is in, I'm like, it wasn't that bad. You know, I liked it because I love Peter Dinklage. I think he can't do no wrong.
I mean, let's face it, anything that's bad, if it still has Peter Dinklage in it, it's worth watching. Like
No, for sure.
Yeah, I enjoy a lot of the stuff that he does. You know, he's probably one of the reasons why I finished watching Game of Thrones, because let's face it, everything else was trash. But whenever he was in it, was like it was awesome.
I've never seen that a day in my life.
You'll love him. If you love Peter Dinklage, you will absolutely fall in love with him more. I'll just say that.
I'm trying to get my YouTube page started back up, and I got people trying to like edit my videos for me. So Game of Thrones is on the docket to be like one of the videos that I watch as a reaction video. So
cool.
Reaction series.
Nice. I like that a lot.
Real good. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was gonna say something. In researching before getting on here, because I actually did read like an article, I think, before I
look at you reading.
I'm reading. I know my letters and my numbers. Supposedly, not John Vaughn, Matthew Vaughn, actually wanted to do Apocalypse before Days of Future Past. And I kind of think that would have been interesting.
That'd have been great.
It would have,
especially if Apocalypse
give more opportunity to flesh out the characters more. Especially if you think like with Apocalypse having Cyclops, having Jean Grey as young individuals, and then Wolverine, Logan has to go back and he runs into these younger. I mean, we get it later on when they actually are, they're trapped in Alkali Lake and they're trying to get out and they let him loose. But it would have been interesting to see.
It's not the same. It would have been more,
like a Logan who was aware of what was going on.
Right. Who he's cognizant of the fact that because if you think about it, if you go through the whole trajectory of this, he's met them so many times, he just doesn't remember.
Yeah. And
they've met him. It was just multiple times. Like, I think like, what was it? X-Men Origins. Scott is blind the entire time. So he doesn't know that he met him. You know what I'm saying? And Wolverine gets shot, so he doesn't know that he met him. So like and then like he meets Jean, but he kind of doesn't remember it because she gives him his memories back. So it kind of wipes out even meeting her at that point, because when he meets her as an adult, he doesn't remember her. Like, but so it's like he's met them so many times. So to have like that comic, it would be very similar to when he met Beast. in this film. It'd be like when he met Beast. That was like one of the best scenes of this film. Like, because he's like, we become real good friends in the future. Like, he's like, you know, it's come on, Beastie. There's a little Beast in there. I know it is.
He's like, do I make it? He's like, no.
Oh, right. Just very stone cold. And it's like, to me, and then it's like, when then you go back to The Last Stand and you see them fighting side by side and you remember this scene, like, those are great little moments to pull from. So I agree to Apocalypse should have been first, and it should have been an Endgame type of situation. Apocalypse should have been first, and Apocalypse should have won. So it made them have to go back to
that would actually been a better Days of Future Past, I think, than what we got.
Than the Sentinels. Like, I understand that they're
they
popular.
Had to bring the Sentinels in just because we got the tease in Last Stand, and I mean, let's face it, and we didn't really get Sentinels. And
we got their version, and I was like, what is this?
You got like a fluid, Mystique looking Sentinel, like going down the elevator in the mansion. Like, that was, this is cool. They're getting Rogue out, you know, Magneto's making the Great go up. So it's kind of like the little Magneto elevator thing going. And then all of a sudden the elevator door opens and there's like this giant Sentinel.
Like this giant arm that just comes out. Like,
and it's like, let me get out of here real quick.
But also but that's what I didn't understand really. Like, I understand you're gigantic, but also you can shift. So why don't y'all just be the same size as the people? You can fight them better. They get you by you being so big. Mm-hmm. Like, if you could transform like Mystique, like her height changes with every person that she turns into. Her height changes, so it should be feasible that they can still be their robot self and still be smaller. But who am I to say anything?
Well, mind you,
hire me, Fox.
We saw what they could have done in X-Men 97 with, you know, people being like these sleeper Sentinels.
Never seen it.
How? Like, what are you
I'm
doing?
telling you right now, if you weren't big into the animated series, it's great.
I'm sleeping. The way I work, I'm tired. I just go
we're glad you're here with us. But I will tell you, as soon as you're able to, before Game of Thrones, you will
X-Men 97. Game of Thrones is like so Days of Future Past. Like, I'm not like I'm not watching that no time soon, but I will be watching X-Men 97 because I've been hearing too much about it and I think it's going to kill it for me a little bit if I hear too much more. So
but yeah, I mean, I get that, but I will be honest. Like,
Megan, don't hate me. Don't hate me.
Look, I'm a huge Marvel fan, and I think X-Men 97 is the best thing they've ever put out. Hands down.
And then they went and fired the best thing that they ever put out, creator, which is wild.
Yeah, there's that. But you can't go into it thinking that. Just watch the show.
I will. I promise.
Good.
I don't know what's going on with that either. That ain't my cup of tea. I'm just here for the show. Like, so whatever y'all do on that side with the creator and what y'all didn't like or what y'all do like or however it is, I'm just here for the show. I heard the show is amazing, and that's what I'm going to focus on.
And he helped make some of the second season too, so there's still going to be some of that.
Nice.
Yeah. And if you want more Gambit, like the crop top thing was like, I actually love seeing Gambit in casual outfits.
That's all you had to say.
Like, it was
Gambit in a crop top.
It was really cool seeing them like dress down more and
like regular people, because they are regular people. They don't have to be in their X suits every 24/7.
If you go back to the animated series, there's a whole thing where Gambit's going through Louisiana. He's like in New Orleans, and he's still in the whole bodysuit.
Yeah.
That's not conspicuous at all. Why are you in a leotard? Like, what's going on with
sir? Somebody draw him new clothes. This is where he lives.
Well, it wasn't even
like he wouldn't be.
It wasn't even just the dressing down. It was Gambit making beignets for everyone at the X Mansion. It was just like a normal morning at the X Mansion.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he forgot the powdered sugar, but like whatever. That stuck with me. But it was a very normalizing
as it should.
It's a very normalizing way to start just the best freaking X-Men show I've ever seen. So
I love that because like it doesn't have to be like I'm a person who loves character development. I like character moments. That's why I like the 2 Xavier scene is like a scene that I'll put that up as like my top 50 of great scenes to watch, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a poignant moment for that character. It's such a beautiful scene, like everything about it, how it's lighted, how they are looking at each other, but they're not looking at each other, and they finally like catch each other, and it's such a great scene because we forget, like people forget when they're writing these movies, they're like, yeah, we want the powers, we want the Magneto to lift stuff, and we want big explosions and Wolverine to come out screaming because he's a Wolverine and stuff. Like we want these moments, but also they're human.
Yeah.
So we need the human moments so we can relate to them. So to have moments in like X-Men 97, like y'all was saying, where they are just in the kitchen and he's cooking, like, oh, Gambit could cook beignets? We ain't know that, but you would think he would because of where he's from, right? It makes sense for his character,
Yeah.
but it adds to his character. And those are great moments that, like, I think people just kind of like bypass because they're waiting for like the explosion or like the threat to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can have some homestead like moments that doesn't, that then leads to like the danger.
It's the normalizing. It's like two of the things that I love most about X2 is one, the scene between Bobby and Logan in the kitchen where he's sitting there and Logan just hands him the Dr. Pepper and he just
the Coke.
he makes it cold, like, and they're sitting there talking, and it's a normal
sexually
conversation. Like,
charged.
being like, I'd love to be close to my, girlfriend, but I can't. And then you have the scene where he's coming out to his parents and disclosing what he is.
Yeah.
And it's very much something that a lot of people can relate to. And I think that's where a lot of things go well. And again, like Avengers Age of Ultron, as much as I wasn't a big fan of the whole Barton like farm scene, I loved Tony and Steve arguing with the wood. Like he rips it with his hands, and then as Tony's walking away, he's like, "That's mine. Don't touch my wood." Like those little moments where you have them being human, what Marvel has always been about, and when we don't get those moments, like the montage in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Peter is trying to be Spider-Man and juggling his life. He's his suit is bleeding into all of his clothes, and his clothes are all red and blue and whatever else. And he's getting sick, and I'm Spider-Man, and he's trying to get cold medicine, but he's like still in a vest. Like, that's the kind of stuff that makes these movies more fun for me. And if it's all testosterone driven, like high impact but no content for the characters, it's not worth watching.
It doesn't mean anything. It lose all its like, because it's like, I can't relate to a guy that puts on a costume and he spits out webs that he created or was already within him. Shout out to Toby. There's no like, I can't relate to that. Yeah. But can I relate to you going to school and having a bully? Yeah. Can I relate to you really liking this person, but you don't know how to tell them? Heck yeah. You know what I mean? Can I relate to you getting a cold, but you still got to go to work? Heck yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to see these things. I want to live these things, but then also I want to get back into the fantasy of it, because that's literally the life that they live. Just because they're superheroes or mutants don't mean that they're still not like, they still don't go through people things, human things.
Yeah.
It makes it more important. It makes it more fun. To me, it makes it more fun. Me personally, I like the Barton scene. I like seeing that he was the one who like literally had a family, like a wife and kids. He like, not to say that everybody didn't have something to lose, but he had like a lot to lose. Like, and to me, setting up that scene with him, with us realizing that he had a family, then to like Infinity War and losing that, Endgame and like losing that family, that it was great. That's a great setup.
That's the payoff of being able to go back and look at hindsight. Because again, by itself, the Barton farm scene wasn't a great scene until the Russo brothers and Marcus and McFeely decided, we're going to make that more impactful with Endgame, and making that a moment, making him Ronin, which
I loved it,
which worked out well. Mind you, there's the question of like, why was he going after all the ethnic people, all the ethnic gangs and stuff like that?
You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. We ain't gonna talk about that though. We ain't gonna talk about that.
I always thought of it this way. It's because all the white guys were killed off already. Like we're 4 years later. Like there's a lot of people he's killed.
I was like, okay, sir.
We'll try. But it's one of those things where it's like the human element is, I think, very important. And I think that's why the Xavier scene is important to you, because it shows him as a weakness. It's why as much as I'm, again, I'm not a big fan of the Beast or the Mystique of the First Class group. But there are two moments where I really did like Mystique, and it was more because of the communication. You have her trying to be whatever in First Class, being whatever that Eric wants her to be. And when she finally goes back to her original form and he says perfection, it's like you see that look at him like, I don't care what you look like. I care about who you are and be who you are. And then she goes and in turn does that to Hank. And then, of course, they go back and revisit that in Days of Future Past, where she's like, do you remember what you said last time? Do you remember what I said? And it's this idea of like, he was almost there, because Hank's like, you're beautiful. And he was talking about her as herself, which was great. But then he wasn't accepting of himself. So he was only halfway there.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting.
And it's like, we could have been blue together, baby. Like, what we doing? Let's be blue together. You know what I mean? But I feel like for Mystique's character, I would have loved because like Mystique is not a hero.
Yeah.
Okay. She's an anti-hero at best, but she is not a hero. She looks out for herself. And then when she started getting into like, adopting these kids and like I think like the Morlock, like part of the comics and all that kind of stuff, she started to like soften up a little bit, but she ain't no hero. But for me personally, in Dark Phoenix, I would have loved it if instead of killing her off, which I was still happy about that because it was time for her to go. I would have liked if, because of what was happening to Jean, because of what was happening to Jean, if she would have walked away pissed off, and this would have made her like her heel turn. She's like, I've been trying to save y'all this entire time. Nobody listens to me, because they didn't listen to her. They was like, yo, we need to turn around and go back. They like, no, we need to save. Like, she was like, we need to save Jean. We need to, like, she's not making the choices. I would have loved it if this was like the catalyst for her becoming like the bad person that we saw. And I thought Days of Future Past, I thought this was when we were going to see her possibly turn. Yeah. I was like, yes, she's going to turn,
but then she
because she's taking matters into her own hand. You feel me? I was just like, yeah, you almost had her. You almost had her to be. Feelings was hurt. That's all I can say.
All right, final thoughts, everybody. Go.
What, of Days of Future Past?
Yeah. At this point, it could be any movie, any movie at all.
We've talked any movie? Okay, Amazing Spider-Man 2. So, no, say I don't know. I like these films. Keep making them, even if I don't like them to some degree. It's still content for my channel. It's still content to talk about. But also, I just like to see the thoughts and ideas that people have, even if I don't agree with it. I'm happy you made it, and I was able to partake in it. So,
what do you think, Megan?
Sorry, you guys were glitching out for a little bit, so I didn't hear like the last minute. Oh. What was the question?
Okay, last thoughts for yourself. What do you think for the movies or for the movie?
I think the movie would have done a lot better if there was some kind of build up to it. I think that's why people aren't a big fan of it, because it does feel messy because it came out of nowhere. But I genuinely liked it. I liked the characters' roles in it, and I would have liked to see some of those characters keep going, but who knows what Deadpool and Wolverine will bring us.
Right. Yeah. I agree on that. I can't wait for that.
Yeah. The more I look into this film, there are little nuggets of what could have been. In the comics, Azazel and Mystique are a couple. And it was said in an interview, I can't remember who it was with, that they were actually going to make them, I believe it was brother and sister. Or no. He was going to be her father. That's what it was going to be. Azazel was going to be Mystique's father, which they never elaborated on. It didn't ever happen. There was only a quick reference because he was part of Trask's experiments. There are lots of things that they intended to. I think the movie would have been a lot different if we would have seen the first draft versus what they did. I also think it would have been better if they would have done Apocalypse first. Maybe we wouldn't have gotten Ivan Ooze, but we'll talk about that down the road because we're not there yet. And for you, Z, just so you know, we're technically doing them in chronological order, kind of, sort of, in a way. It's not necessarily release order, but we're doing Deadpool 1 and 2. We're going to do each of those a week before. So I think, was it the 10th, and then whatever is after that, the 17th. Deadpool 1's the 10th, and then Deadpool 2 is the 17th. So we're gonna cover these, and again, I think whatever happens, even whatever plot holes we do have, I think Deadpool and Wolverine may very well touch on those things. But I say that very carefully because a lot of times as Marvel fans, we put a lot of expectation and a lot of hopes and dreams on the films to do something. And especially
Yeah,
after
and then they
Endgame, because I
don't.
think Endgame was a big payoff for a lot of things, as well as Infinity War. And not everything is going to be to that aspect. I think Deadpool and Wolverine
And
has
it
the potential
shouldn't.
of helping
It really
course correct
shouldn't.
some of the issues with the MCU
Mm-hmm.
that have been happening in the last two phases. But at the same time, they're definitely going to play on a lot of the stuff from Fox. We already know the Fox logo is in the, in the end
Yeah.
of time,
Yeah.
and we're seeing that as something that's
Mm-hmm.
being wiped away. It's very much going to joke on those things, and Deadpool's always done that. The first Deadpool had a helicarrier. The
Yeah.
second Deadpool was heavily referencing MCU characters, and
Yeah.
even in I think it was like the promo. I don't remember if he did it in the actual in Deadpool 2 where he calls Josh Brolin Thanos. And so,
Yeah,
there are
he does
these
it in
things.
the film. Yeah. He's
So
like,
so
he
he's
was
like
like,
zip it
shut it,
Thanos.
Thanos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
This thing.
so there's all of these things. And even Hugh Jackman being referenced in the first film, there's going to be a lot of playoff. It may not satisfy everything that everybody wants, but I do feel like there are things from these movies that will be a payoff, even if they're just referenced. But I do believe, kind of like what Megan says, these are all different timelines. We're going to find that out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it.
I mean, even Deadpool references that. He was like, these timelines are difficult. Like, he was like, it's McAvoy, Stewart. He was like, which one? And like, he's confused.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Deadpool is like on everybody's mind right now, is because he's saying all the things that the fans are saying. He's like, this doesn't make sense. We're like, we said that too. It don't make sense. Like, what is happening here? So like, to have Wolverine and Deadpool, because I'm pretty sure Wolverine might break the fourth wall with him in some type of way, because he did it in like a trailer, like a post, like in a clip that I saw.
Yeah.
Like they both kind of like broke, like, like the fourth wall. So it's going to be interesting to see their take on Wolverine. This is another iteration of Wolverine in a sense. So like, it's going to be interesting to see his take, and if there's any more cameos from like possibly any other future X-Men, or or present X-Men or something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be cool to see.
And it's a failure of a Wolverine. That's the thing. Like it's not even it's not even like a six. It's not one we've seen yet. This one's an utter failure. Whether it's the, let's say it's the younger version of what we see in Logan next week.
Right.
But whatever it is, he's long.
And I'm cool with that, because like Wolverine, if you really go to the comics, he's not always successful. Like, he messes up. Like, his temper gets the better of him most of the time, and it leads to him making mistakes. So to have like Hugh Jackman play like this, not to say he played a perfect version of him, because he still messed up, but he played a version of him that eventually learned from everything that he forgot and then remembered and course corrected himself. So to see what they do with him in this one is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go, let's do this real quick. La, why don't you go ahead and start us? Where can we find you?
All right, folks, you can find me on all social media at Black Girl Marvel on TikTok, and thought I saw something move. My bad. On TikTok and YouTube is Black Girl Marvel's Multiverse, but I am Black Girl Marvel everywhere. I'm trying to get back to my content, trying to get back to bringing some interesting things to y'all. I have a Discord as well. It's in anything you follow me on. There's a link. You can follow me there. Join my Discord. We can talk about things there. We can suggest things for me to review. I'm open to all suggestions. I'm just here to bring some entertainment and some fun, and that's me, Black Girl Marvel.
Awesome. And Megan, where can we find you?
Well, you can find me and my co-host Max of Vigilante Vibes, a Marvel podcast, everywhere at Vigilante Vibes Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Megan the Gangsta, and you can find me on Facebook in our non-toxic nerd culture group called Mediaverse Comics Unwrapped.
Nice. Nice. And also be sure to be able to check out Megan and what she does with Nerd Initiative. Guys, thank you so much. Those of you watching, just a reminder, tomorrow is Wrestling Night Live. Be sure to check them out. If you're a wrestling fan and you want to know what's going on, be in the know, check out Rich and Ken. Also, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Fandoms will be on. We're probably going to be talking about some D&D. If you are a D&D fan and you weren't aware, the announcement took place yesterday about the 2024 updates to 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which has been 10 years in the making. So we may have Derek from Paperweight Entertainment. He's checking his schedule, but otherwise we may talk about it for a little bit. And of course, for those of you who may have been looking forward to it and didn't know like I did, there is no Doctor Who tomorrow. There's no Doctor Who on Friday. So, you can weep and mourn just like I am, and waiting for next season. But with that said, thank you guys for joining us. We will be back on next week on our road to Deadpool and Wolverine, talking on Logan, which I'm looking forward to hearing what Megan has to say. Have a good night, guys.
I have a lot.
Yeah.
I have a lot.